There's a certain kind of man you meet who at first seems perfectly normal, maybe even charming. He talks with confidence, smiles easily, and knows how to make people feel seen. But over time, something starts to feel off. His words don't match his actions. His energy drains you. You find yourself questioning your worth, your intuition, even your reality. It's subtle at first, a dismissive tone, a backhanded compliment, a tendency to make every conversation about him. But before long, you're caught in the web of someone who doesn't build, only takes. That's the quiet danger of the low-value man. He doesn't always announce himself with arrogance or aggression. Sometimes he hides behind politeness, charm, or even vulnerability. And by the time you see what's really going on, you've already invested your time, your trust, and your emotional energy into someone who never deserved it in the first place. We often talk about high-value men in terms of status, money, or influence, but that's not what truly defines a person's worth. A high-value man is measured by his principles, his consistency, his ability to lead with respect and empathy, not ego. A low-value man, on the other hand, can wear expensive clothes, drive luxury cars, and still be emotionally bankrupt. His value, or lack thereof, isn't found in his possessions, but in how he treats people, especially those who have nothing to offer him in return. That's why spotting these hidden signs early can save you from months, even years of emotional confusion and self-doubt. Because when you don't recognize them, you end up questioning yourself instead of the person who's quietly undermining your peace. The truth is, low-value men are masters of illusion. They can appear successful, ambitious, or even spiritual on the surface, but pay attention long enough, and their true nature reveals itself. You'll notice they crave control more than connection. They use charm as a weapon, not as an expression of warmth. They show interest not because they see your value, but because they sense your energy, and they want to feed on it. To the untrained eye, they seem confident, but in reality, they operate from deep insecurity. Their sense of worth depends entirely on how much they can dominate, impress, or manipulate others. Once that control slips away, so does their composure. It's not that all low-value men are inherently bad people. Some are simply lost, unhealed, or unaware. But the problem is, when you don't set boundaries, they will drain you dry trying to fill the emptiness inside them. They'll pull you into emotional games, testing your patience, pushing your buttons, and then blaming you for reacting. They'll subtly make you feel guilty for asking for more while offering you less and less. They thrive on imbalance because it gives them a sense of power. And that's exactly why protecting yourself begins with awareness. You can't fix or change a low-value man. You can only recognize him early enough to step away before he costs you your peace, your self-esteem, and your trust in good men. You see, the danger isn't always in the obvious red flags. It's in the quiet compromises you make when you convince yourself that he'll change or that he didn't mean it. It's in the way you silence your intuition to keep the peace, or rationalize his behavior because he has potential. The truth is, potential doesn't equal value. A low-value man can have dreams, charm, and confidence, but if his mindset is rooted in entitlement, ego, and emotional immaturity, he'll only drag you down to his level. And when you're a person who naturally gives, nurtures, and believes in others, you become his ideal target. Not because you're weak, but because your light exposes everything he's hiding from himself. There's a quiet power in learning to recognize these patterns, because once you see them clearly, you no longer fall for the surface-level charm. You start paying attention to the energy behind the words, the tone, the consistency, the intent. You notice how a man responds when you say no, when you set a boundary, or when you shine without needing his validation. That's when the mask of a low-value man starts to slip. He can't handle not being in control. He can't celebrate your success without feeling threatened. He can't give without expecting something in return. His version of love often comes with conditions, manipulation, or emotional withdrawal when you stop playing his game. And here's the hard truth. The longer you entertain a low-value man, the more disconnected you become from your own worth. You start internalizing his projections, believing you're too much, too emotional, too demanding. You start walking on eggshells, adjusting your light so he won't feel overshadowed. But the moment you realize you don't have to earn the right to be respected, you take your power back. You stop engaging with men who can't meet you at your level. You stop confusing attention with affection and manipulation with love. You begin to see that real value both in yourself and others, comes from integrity, not image. The modern dating world has made it even harder to spot these types. Social media has given low-value men the perfect stage to perform confidence without ever cultivating character. They post about loyalty, self-improvement, and discipline, but behind the scenes they're inconsistent, defensive, and emotionally unavailable. They want the benefits of connection without the accountability that comes with it. And if you're not grounded in your worth, it's easy to mistake performance for authenticity. That's why this conversation matters more than ever. Because every emotionally intelligent, self-aware woman deserves to know what she's looking at before she invests her heart. Understanding these hidden signs isn't about judgment, it's about protection. It's about recognizing when a man's actions stem from insecurity rather than strength, when his need for control masquerades as leadership, and when his detachment is really avoidance. It's about learning that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away, not to prove a point, but to preserve your peace. The low-value man teaches one lesson above all others. Never lower your standards to be understood by someone who refuses to grow, because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. You'll start recognizing it everywhere, in conversations, in friendships, even in yourself when you've tolerated too much for too long. And that's when everything shifts. You stop romanticizing potential and start requiring presence. You stop chasing validation and start embodying self-respect. You stop mistaking a man's need for you as proof of his value, and instead you start choosing those who add to your life, not drain it. That's where your power lies, in discernment, because not every man who wants your energy deserves your access. And the more you learn to see the difference, the safer, stronger, and freer you become. When you begin to understand what makes a low-value man tick, it becomes easier to see through the fog of charm, the carefully crafted persona, and the temporary bursts of affection that he uses to keep people hooked. The truth is, low-value men rarely operate from genuine self-awareness. They operate from survival mode. They chase validation because it temporarily fills the void they refuse to face within themselves. Their sense of importance doesn't come from purpose or principle, but from how effectively they can control someone else's emotions. That's why the first hidden sign of a low-value man is emotional instability disguised as passion. He might present himself as deep, intense, or driven, but beneath the surface lies volatility. One moment he's showering you with praise, the next he's distant, cold, or dismissive. You'll notice that his moods swing dramatically based on whether things are going his way. He'll say things like, "You know how emotional I am," or "I just care too much," using passion as an excuse for unpredictability. But love that's conditional on his mood isn't love. It's control wrapped in chaos. When you're dealing with emotional instability, you start to feel like you're walking through a minefield. Every word, every reaction feels like it could set him off. You start questioning your tone, your timing, even your truth, just to avoid conflict. That's the hidden manipulation. He doesn't need to shout or threaten. He just needs you to start self-censoring. And once you do that, he owns your peace. The emotionally unstable man thrives on confusion because it keeps you off balance, unsure of where you stand. You end up trying to fix him, calm him, or earn his approval, but it's a game with no finish line. The best protection is distance, not patience, because no amount of love can stabilize a man who refuses to regulate his own emotions. The second hidden sign is insecurity disguised as confidence. Low-value men often appear bold and self-assured in the beginning. They speak with certainty, make strong opinions sound like truth, and carry themselves with an air of control. But confidence built on arrogance is paper-thin. Watch how he reacts to criticism, or how he behaves when someone else is getting attention. The low-value man crumbles under comparison. He might start subtly undermining others to feel taller, or compete with you instead of supporting you. He'll often use humor to mask jealousy, saying things like, "I don't get too full of yourself," or "Let's see how long that lasts." What's happening underneath is a fragile ego that can't celebrate anyone else's success because it feels like a threat to his own identity. That insecurity seeps into every dynamic. He needs to win arguments, control narratives, and be the smartest voice in the room. He'll correct you over small details, not because he's right, but because he needs to feel superior. But real confidence doesn't require dominance. It creates safety. A high-value man can stand beside a powerful woman without feeling diminished. A low-value man, however, will always try to dim the light that makes him feel exposed. Protecting yourself here means trusting what you feel when you start shrinking to keep someone else comfortable. Confidence uplifts, insecurity manipulates. If you feel smaller around him, it's not because you're too much, it's because he's too little. The third hidden sign is a lack of accountability masked as victimhood. The low-value man is an expert at twisting blame. No matter what happens, it's never his fault. If he hurts you, it's because you misunderstood him. If he fails, it's because the world is against him. This self-pitying narrative is one of his most powerful tools because it disarms empathy-driven people. He knows that if he plays the victim long enough, you'll feel sorry for him. You'll start justifying his behavior, telling yourself he's been through a lot, or he just needs love and support. But what he really needs is accountability, a concept he runs from like fire. The moment you try to hold him responsible, he'll either withdraw emotionally or flip the script, making you feel guilty for even bringing it up. This kind of emotional deflection keeps you trapped in cycles of confusion. You find yourself constantly forgiving without resolution. His apologies, when they come, are vague. "I'm sorry you feel that way," or "I didn't mean it like that." They're designed to calm the storm without addressing the cause. A man who refuses to take responsibility can't grow, and if you stay, neither can you. Protecting yourself means recognizing that empathy without boundaries turns into self-destruction. You can love someone and still refuse to carry their emotional baggage. Growth is a choice, and low-value men often choose comfort over change. The fourth hidden sign is a transactional view of relationships. A low-value man doesn't truly understand partnership. He sees it as an exchange. He gives affection to get compliance. He gives attention to gain control. Everything he does is rooted in a silent, "what's in it for me?" mentality. He might seem generous at first, doing small favors or giving compliments, but those gestures always come with strings attached. If you ever fail to meet his expectations, he'll remind you of everything he's done for you. "After all I've done, this is how you treat me." He'll say, framing kindness as a debt you owe him. In healthy dynamics, giving is organic. It flows from love, not obligation. But a low-value man uses generosity as a form of manipulation. It's not about connection. It's about leverage. And once he feels he's invested enough, he'll start demanding emotional returns. The best way to protect yourself here is to stop confusing effort with intention. Just because someone does something for you doesn't mean they did it for you. They might have done it for control, validation, or ego. The difference lies in how they behave when you say no. That's when a man's true nature surfaces. The fifth hidden sign is emotional laziness disguised as independence. You'll hear him say things like, "I don't do drama," or "I'm not the emotional type." At first, this sounds mature, even refreshing. But soon you realize what he really means is, "I don't want to take emotional responsibility." He uses detachment as a shield to avoid vulnerability. He won't open up, won't communicate deeply, and when conflict arises, he retreats or shuts down completely. This calm exterior is often a mask for avoidance. He doesn't do emotional work because he doesn't believe he needs to. Instead, he expects others to adapt to his lack of emotional depth. Over time, you start to feel unseen, unheard, and uncared for, not because you're asking for too much, but because he's giving too little. Real strength isn't about being emotionless. It's about being emotionally aware. A high-value man can sit in discomfort, listen, and engage with empathy. A low-value man, however, treats emotional connection like a chore. Protecting yourself means recognizing that distance isn't peace when it's used as a weapon. You deserve communication, not avoidance. You deserve emotional presence, not emotional convenience. And finally, the sixth hidden sign is lack of purpose disguised as freedom. He'll often talk about living in the moment, going with the flow, or not being tied down. While that can sound adventurous, look closer and you'll see directionless energy. He avoids responsibility by labeling it freedom. He jumps from goal to goal, person to person, never fully committing to anything, because commitment would require consistency, and consistency would reveal his lack of discipline. He may criticize others for being too structured or too serious, but secretly, he envies their stability. The low-value man doesn't want to grow up. He wants to stay comfortable in chaos, pretending it's a lifestyle choice. Being around him can feel exciting at first, spontaneous, unpredictable, but soon it becomes draining. You realize you're always the one holding things together, always the one planning, managing, or fixing. That's because he's addicted to freedom without responsibility. True freedom requires structure. True independence means knowing your direction. Protecting yourself here means not mistaking potential for purpose. Don't invest in what a man could become if he had direction. Invest in who he is when no one is pushing him. When you step back and connect the dots, a pattern emerges. The low-value man hides behind personas, passionate, confident, independent, but behind each mask lies avoidance, insecurity, and fear. And the greatest way to protect yourself isn't by changing him. It's by refusing to play the role he needs you to play. Your awareness is your shield. Once you see clearly, you stop negotiating with behavior that drains your worth. You stop explaining your boundaries to people committed to crossing them. You start choosing peace over potential, truth over illusion, and self-respect over attachment. Because the moment you do, every low-value man fades from your reality, and only those who mirror your worth can truly meet you where you stand. When you finally begin to see these patterns for what they are, something inside you shifts. You start to understand that protecting yourself from low-value men isn't about building walls. It's about strengthening your awareness. It's about learning to trust the quiet signals your intuition sends long before your mind catches up. The truth is, low-value men don't just waste your time. They blur your self-perception. They make you question your needs, your emotions, and your boundaries. And that's why the healing process begins not with anger, but with clarity. You realize that every moment you spent doubting yourself wasn't weakness. It was your spirit trying to protect you, even when you didn't yet have the language to name what was happening. In hindsight, it's never just about the man, it's about the lesson he carries. Every low-value connection teaches you something vital about your standards, your emotional patterns, and your strength. It teaches you what parts of yourself still crave validation, what wounds you're still trying to heal through others, and what boundaries you've been afraid to enforce. That's why walking away from a low-value man isn't failure, it's awakening. It's the moment you stop asking, "Why wasn't I enough for him?" and start realizing, "He was never capable of meeting me where I am." The truth is, the moment you decide to value yourself differently, your entire reality begins to change. You stop attracting chaos and start magnetizing peace. You stop entertaining potential and start requiring consistency. You stop seeking connection from people who only show up halfway. The universe has a way of mirroring your internal state. When you finally honor your worth, it stops sending lessons disguised as men. Instead, it sends alignment. The low-value man exits your life not because you're cold, but because your energy no longer validates his games. You evolve beyond his reach. But before you can reach that level of discernment, you have to rebuild your relationship with yourself. Low-value men often leave emotional residue, self-doubt, confusion, the echo of their words replaying in your mind. You might find yourself overanalyzing, wondering if you were too harsh, too distant, too demanding. That's the psychological imprint of manipulation. It makes you believe that self-respect is selfishness. But as you heal, you begin to see the difference between being too much and being too aware. You start reclaiming your emotional space. You start rebuilding your voice. And little by little, you return to yourself stronger, clearer, and far less tolerant of anything that drains your light. The biggest transformation happens when you stop seeing low-value behavior as personal. It's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of his wounds. A man can only love from the level of consciousness he's reached. If he's rooted in insecurity, he'll love conditionally. If he's rooted in ego, he'll love transactionally. If he's rooted in fear, he'll love inconsistently. None of that has anything to do with your value. It has everything to do with his readiness. The high-value version of you learns not to fix broken patterns, but to walk away from them. You don't argue, you don't chase, you don't beg for clarity. You simply let his absence create space for something real.